my first step ever. Crossing 150 episodes meant that we have been able to kind of reach out to 150 such amazing human beings who have taken their first steps, and many more. And they were very, very welcoming and very, very open to share their challenging journeys behind the scenes of what really went through, so that you and I can build conviction and take actionable steps towards what we really want to do. But the story doesn't end here, and we don't stop here, because we have some really interesting guest speakers from diverse fields, from platforms, and from the thought processes, what they have been doing in their life and how they have been creating a difference for themselves and also for people around them. I am very excited to be welcoming someone really special all the way from you. Please join me in welcoming Michaell Magrutsche from all the way from the US. Hi, Michael. Welcome on my first step ever.
Beautiful to be here and talk to you, and also talking to young kids, because I'm 65. So, it's good to talk to kids. I would love to have somebody to talk to when I was young, because literally nobody told me anything. They just said, okay. I was a sick child, and then I went into school, and I was very neurodiverse. I didn't understand. I couldn't read. I was stuttering. And basically they said, hey, you got to figure it out. And basically that was my whole life, always to figure it out.
And I think that's what I really appreciate about you coming here today, because it's actually kind of, being someone that you never got, that you are, really looking out for, that help, that mentor, that voice, even that support. I think for a lot of us while growing up, we never had that support or that direction. And we eventually figure out in our life when we grow up. But it's very important if we can be that for someone. And I think you're doing exactly that. So we are very fortunate to have you today on the podcast, chatting with us and for our viewers and listeners. I'll give a little sneak peek about you to our listeners right now before we begin with your journey. So Michaell is a neurodiverse multidisciplinary artist and creativity awareness educator. Dyslexia led Michaell to see the world contextually, developing a human-centric perspective through art, which saved him from feeling like an outcast. Now, I understand that a lot of us do feel a feeling of being an outcast, and from many different perspectives. And there are many out there who can definitely, relate with you. And I know that we will be gaining a lot out of how you process things and how you have made life beautiful for yourself and the people around you. So I would say that Michaell is an advocate for human education and understanding neurodiversity, contributing to a wide range of topics. Self-taught, Michaell has written 6 books about art, humanity, and inclusivity. In The Smart of Art, he explores why most artists live at poverty level. With over 250 guest appearances since March 2022. Wow, that's quite a lot.
It's
And I think that's
400 now. It's
amazing.
400. That was old. It's 400 now. Yeah.
It's 400 now. Amazing. So you are on the go of, meeting so many people, educating them, sharing your experience, which is amazing, Michaell. Michaell shares his journey and insights on viewing life from a human-centric perspective and enhancing fulfillment. Something that we all are seeking or, looking for, the fulfillment, the joy, the satisfaction of being where we are, of being who we are, and doing what we are doing. So, Michaell, let's trace our steps back to your childhood, your early days. Please let us know what sort of mindset were you surrounded with when you were growing up, and if there's any one incident that kind of changed your perspective for good.
So when I was little, I told you, I was a sick child, and then I went to school, and then I found the second punch in my face that I'm neurodiverse, and I couldn't read, I couldn't repeat, I couldn't regurgitate. So when you say left and right and two and left and right, I couldn't repeat that. Even the simplest things, I couldn't make sense out of it. It didn't fit. The only sense to me made art creation, not the art looking at art, so the art creation. Because what is so magical about art, what I found out later, I wasn't aware of that, was that the kids, you don't care who is playing what. If a girl plays a man, or if you have no background for the art, you just create, and it's gonna be good, and it can be very successful. Just you and me dancing on the stage, trying the stuff, and even if we can't dance, it's fun it's engaging, and it doesn't really ever be judged as, oh, this is good or bad. It just, when art, you create something together. And it's like what I say always with symphony orchestra. When you have a symphony orchestra, the person on the light and the person that opens the curtain is exactly as important than the first violinist or the conductor. And the flutists have also some, and the triangle, everybody, it's the whole thing. It's not like we see in system where it's all vertical. It's like, oh, you got to start here and then you go higher, 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 higher. It doesn't work in art. You get better, but you dance, basically. You constantly dance. And that's nobody cared about race or agenda or anything in the art, because it doesn't. It's about the product, whatever you come out of it. It doesn't. There have to be two men and two girls, and there have to be, no, it doesn't. It just worked out, and that was very liberating to me. And you know yourself, because how many people that they want to do suicide and all this stuff, and depressed, and then they see a movie or hear a song, or and they're saved literally by the art. They just say, oh yeah, so I'm not the only one that is sad. You hear a song about sadness or depression, oh, other people are too, because we always think we are different. And this is a very interesting thing, that everybody in the world, I've talked to top sports people, top successful people, and nobody ever said, "Oh, I fit it in. Still, I fit in." What you call the superstar, sports
Hmm.
in high school, the high school. But everybody loves you. Everybody makes you. I want to
Yeah.
be the cheerleader. I want to be the superstar in sports. The quarterback. They say no. They don't fit. I don't know. I've never heard a single person that said they fit in. I think all humans fit in. If they don't fit in, and that's correct, because everybody is one of one. And this is where I bring the whole thing together, where everybody is one and one, and nature doesn't make mistakes. So if you want to talk to God and complain, then complain to God, not to us. If you feel you need to be like somebody, but like, who do you want to be? Everybody is by DNA, fingerprints, ears, eyes, one of one individual, right? And look at your own family. They're not all the same. They have different perspectives on life. And that's what is, I think, if I would have known that, if I would, one thing would have helped me a lot. Because I
This is
tried to
very,
live I tried till 53 to fit in.
I thought that we are kind of I like that, Michael, that we have kind of straight away gone into the aspect of what we are kind of really going to cover and kind of chat about in this particular conversation, because it's what we are delving into are very, very real, very important, and very, I would say, also some very serious topics over here, and it is very important that we do talk about this and where it all stems, because we have you here, so we can probably ask you in your personal journey that where did it really stem from, which we know is how we've just mentioned that when you were growing up, you felt a little different. You felt like you did not kind of belong to, as you mentioned, the outcast, or you did not fit in, as you mentioned. But no one really is feeling that, whatever it is, And from there, as you mentioned, that that your feeling of where can I belong, what is that makes me, but more than being belonging somewhere, I heard something that you mentioned, which was how you feel liberated. And that's where you kind of connected with art, because art made you feel that there are no boundaries, there are no restrictions, there are no rules, there are not
Mm-hmm.
parameters, and that's why you feel that you are one within yourself, because you are able to explore more about yourself.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
need to fit in anything, you can create your own versions of things. And very, very nice thing that you mentioned, that yes, art saves a lot of lives, for
Yeah.
sure. So I want to kind of trace back into this journey of yours, because we see that why you have chosen the path that you have chosen, and now that you're on the path of, you've embarked on the path to also, educate other people about
Mm-hmm.
what liberation really feels like. No one has really ever felt that they fit in anywhere. So while you were growing up, like let's say in your early teens, were you still struggling with that, identity crisis, or not being able to belong to certain place? what was exactly going in your head during your teens, and then we would like to understand that how does it transition into your early 20s, that how did things started moving for you from feeling frustrated, and then you are that person who's like, let me explore art. How did that art come into your life?
So first of all, I was very creative with 5 years. I was an artist since I was 4 or 5 years. I lived by close to a forest. I went to the forest. I created little huts, tree huts and stuff, and with my friends, and we painted the tree huts, and then we bought little bikes that we had all bikes, and we tweaked around our bikes, and then we created motorcycles, and so we more and more we got into the expression of ourselves. I liked my fenders red, the other person liked their fenders yellow, the other person liked their fenders blue. So everybody showed their own thing, and nothing was wrong or right. We just did it, like what art allowed us, to do. And so we did more and more and more, and so I wasn't depressed. I enjoy the art, made life enjoyable, even though in the school I was depressed with school because I have no education. I have 8 years of school and I had to 2 years have to repeat 2 years, and it was so sad. I just hated school. I didn't want to go there. I did. There was nothing to gain for me. I didn't gain. So when I, let's say, painted a fender on the bicycle, I saw my impact. I painted my
Amazing.
fender red, right? And my friend read the yellow, and that had an impact. And that's why that was fascinating to us. When you do school, you just, okay, you are like everybody else. You do it, you got to do, but it's not really anything. Oh, you got an A. Okay, you got an A, but so many people got an A. You were not the only one that got an A. So when you generalize humans, you always, and then you say, no, the girls are smarter than the guys, when they're kids. Yeah, so it was just facts that you have to accept. And it wasn't an appreciation, self appreciation. And when you create something, even if you do the podcast, right? You create something and then you look at it back, they can say, okay, Ishani, that I didn't like that podcast, but then they can say, "Oh, it's the best podcast ever." But nobody can take away from you that you did it. You actually had it. You created something out of nothing, and I think that's so. And that just gives you self-esteem that nobody can take that away. I can say, "Oh, Ishani, you shouldn't be a podcaster, or you're the best podcaster in the world." It doesn't really matter because you have fun doing it, and we dance and we do it. That's it. Nobody can take that away from you, ever.
Michael, I think you've mentioned two very interesting and very, very important things for anyone who sort of, kind of, I think the whole point where we come to understand that the impact that you're creating, if you can see the impact that you're creating, that gives you a feeling of empowerment, a self-esteem, as you mentioned, and that makes you understand that what your value, when
Yeah,
you see your value in life, it really doesn't matter that what the other person is saying.
yeah,
I think exactly what you were just kind of giving a very, very concrete example of, and that's very right. And I think it's very interesting that while you were growing up, you took that chance of going the exploratory way of going growing up.
yeah,
And very, very well said that in our education system, where we are actually taught facts, we are told this is the way things are. We do not really use our creative brains or our left brain, right brain to really think if this is
yeah,
something that is, what does this mean, what is the reason behind this, why am I doing this, can I do it differently, why can't I do it differently. And I think that is the age when we are growing up, that we must question, that we must think out of the box. And I think that comes very naturally to kids at that point in time, because we are still being conditioned. We are not yet conditioned as a human, a typical
mhm,
human. I like the fact that while you were growing up, that you and your friends got together and painted the town red, yellow, green, blue, and everything. And from there, I see that you had that courage to say that I will go my way, because yes, there's a thing that a lot of people feel dissatisfaction with what they're doing, but we really don't tend to take a step to make things work for us. So I like the fact that you did take a step to make things work for you. So please take us through that. How did you make this thing work for you?
I
Like,
wasn't
what?
conscious. Ishami, I wasn't conscious of it. I just did it. You know, when you were young, you want to belong, right? You have that DNA drive that drives you. You need to belong to everyone. That's why you often make very dumb decisions, that you go to the crazy woman and the crazy guys, and you make it the crazy decisions. But you want to belong, and that's the most important, because your parents said, no, you got to go to school now. You're not in the family anymore, right? You got to go and grow up. And I think that's very frightening. And that's why you want to belong. And that's why you use your third superpower, which I think our third superpower is adaptation. We adapt. We adapt. Even if we don't like it, we adapt, because it's better than if we don't fit in. And we adapt to the stuff, and then it's very hard to come back. It's very hard to come back when your whole life you adapted, and all of a sudden with 25 you wake up a little bit and say, what the hell did I do? Who am I? And you can't find that who you are, because you were adapting constantly. You know, we're adapting to these people, to that people, to the boyfriend, to the girlfriend. You adapted, and you lost yourself. And that's why I say everybody is a one of one. Nature doesn't make mistakes. If you say nature makes a mistake, but science says nature doesn't make mistakes, and everybody is one of one, and you need to nurture that one of oneness and find it. And life is unveiling, discovering who is that me, that one of one. Where there's one of 8 billion people. Imagine you're one of 8 billion people, and I'm one of 8 billion. That makes alone our dance interesting. That I say, what an honor to talk to on the other side of the world. I'm talking to somebody that is one of 8 billion, not a girl. You know, it's another human, and you talk to another human here, and it doesn't really matter if what gender we are, race or anything, because we are one of one. You know.
I love the way you see the world, and I think when we see ourselves like that, we actually let go of a lot of identities and association that we have with ourselves,
Mhm.
the labels that we give ourselves, the professional labels that we have, and the kind of identity that we've been building up in our head. And then we have to, stand up to those identities. And then you don't even know then who you are. And I like that how you say that 1 in a billion, which also is a very, very interesting thing, that you feel that, oh, I am unique. I need to be unique, in the sense that I need to find that who I am. But then on the other hand, you also know there's so many people out there, taking things so seriously, wouldn't even impact as much. I mean, if you can just take your life and make it better for yourself and live the way that you want, that's enough, I think. If you are
Yeah.
happy, people in your radius, they are happy, that's enough. And as you mentioned, speaking of finding who you are, we would love to understand that, how that journey began for you. How did you start? I know that it might be through multiple incidences or multiple situations over the period of time, but if you can maybe take us through those in, maybe brief, what really shaped you of who you are today.
Yeah, there was one, I think, decision, a real deep decision. So when I was about 30, I looked at all my CVs and resumes, and looked at them, and I said, "My God, not imagining I'm an artist. I am an artist. I wasn't famous with 30. I mean, people knew I was an artist, and I made some money with making tapes and music and whatever. But I looked at all these resumes, and I said, wow, I think it really doesn't matter what people say if I'm an artist or not. I couldn't be something else. Because with my neurodiversity, I couldn't be an accountant, lawyer, or anything. I just could be an artist. And I think I decided with 30 that I am an artist, no matter if the society says I am or not. I am an artist, and that's all I could be, because I couldn't be something else. And I think that was a very strong decision of me, because I didn't discuss it anymore. In the old, a lot of people say, "Oh no, you're not. You have to be famous. You have to be Warhol. You have to be Picasso." No, you don't. We all artists. We can all be artists, and especially if you can't do anything else, you are an artist. You always art to be a creator. All we are a creative species, a collective creative species. But just look at the companies that we have, all these nations, the companies, Google, Apple, all these things, the religions, everything is a system that we collectively created, right? It's not Steve Jobs who created, because if he would still sit in his San Jose garage and would still solve on computers. He had other people like you or me that helped him and say, "Hey, let's do it. Yeah, let's do a computer. Let's do it together." And that's how we created Google, Apple, all these big companies. We just highlight the one person, but it's not the one person who did it. It's always us together. We do it together.
I love that perspective of yours, and I think it's very difficult for a lot of us to kind of accept the fact that fame and money is not equal to success, because that's not how people are conditioned, and especially in day and age, that it's so important, that wherever you are listening, that becoming a millionaire, that's how the life is going forward, retire early. I think to each there, I definitely believe exactly that we're talking about what gives you happiness, but I think that's very challenging in today's time for everyone to kind of understand that you are enough, that what you are doing, if you are skilled, that's amazing. If not many people know you, maybe that's a matter of time, or maybe that's even okay. But if you're enjoying what you're doing, and if you're skilled at what you're doing, I'm sure at some point in time it will work out in many ways, because a lot of people might need your help, because if you are skilled enough. So I think it's a very interesting point that you brought up, Michael. Moving on from here, I would really love to understand that how did you plan your move towards a professional journey in what you are doing right now, past 30s,
Yeah.
when you realized that you started, what happened?
So the decision was very important that I made that I'm an artist, right? That was important. That recognition. Recognized I'm an artist. I couldn't be anything else. By that, so when I met you after that choice, I wasn't ever discussing with you if I'm an artist or not, or if I'm good or bad, or if I'm good enough. I said, I'm an artist. That's my expression. That's it. And that brought me that just stuff fell into my place. For example, Robert Evans his, I don't know if you know who Robert Evans was, the longest producer of Paramount. He was like 16, 12, 16 years, 14, something about that. I'm not good
Mhm.
at figures. And he did Love Story, he did The Godfather, he did Chinatown. And I was selling documentaries. I was in documentary film, and I sold documentaries. And his producer came to me and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Are you Michaell Magrutsche?" I said, "Yeah, here's my tag." And he says, gives me a card and said, "Could you, when you next time you're back in LA?" And I was weird. I said, "Why is that? Know him? Know I live in LA?" And then I said, "Yeah, would you come?" And I had no idea who he is. I just didn't know. I know the movies, I knew Jack Nicholson, or all the stars, but I didn't know who he was. And I asked my American friends, and they said, "If he was that's weird. Why would he come to you and whatever?" So when I came back, I looked at my cards, because it was in sales, in documentary sales, and I called him, and he says, "Come to me." And we met, and we're become really good friends, and he asked me to create with him. And you I have no film education, nothing. And he was, "I want you to co-produce this with me." And he allowed me to score music with him. And he invited me to live in his house, because I lived about 45 minutes away. He says, "I don't want you to drive at night 45, just stay in my house." And this is one thing of the journey, because I said I was it. So I never question if I'm good or bad. I
Lovely.
am this. It's like I'm saying, I'm not questioning if you're a woman. You're a woman. That's it. I'm not if you're a good woman or a bad woman, right? But you can do the feminine. You are in charge of the feminine. You are who you are, right? I don't have to ask you anything. And this is a self-esteem that I think translated afterwards to, because I was elected to arts commissioner too of a city in Newport Beach here in California. And And then I wrote the books, and it just one thing went after the other. And then I really didn't, I painted a lot. I did film, I did music. And then I came to writing, and now I'm in the writing phase. So most people, as you know, are multidisciplinary. Beyonce is an actress. She's not just a singer. And so for most more artists need to express themselves in different ways, especially if you stay an artist. If you stay in that thing, you need, okay, now, and you don't have to get one instrument, which our parents taught us. You learn the clarinet and that's it. You play clarinet your whole life. No, you do the clarinet, then you go to trumpet, you play piano, whatever comes. And that was very fulfilling. And the key word is fulfilling, because you mentioned it before, but I think that the right word is not happy, but fulfilling. When something makes you fulfilled, because I'm differently fulfilled than you are fulfilled. So that is my one of oneness. My one of oneness says, when I talk with Ishani, I'm fulfilled. That means I'm fulfilled. You might not be fulfilled, but if you are too, then it's perfect. Then it's perfect that we are both fulfilled talking to each other. And that means we are on the right path. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but fulfillment confirms that you yourself are on the right path. Now, I could hate this interview, and you know what I mean? I don't, but I could, and then you would be only fulfilled, which is fine too. It's on your path, you should be fulfilled. And in this case, obviously, we both are fulfilled and talking, and that means you and I are on the same path for our path. We are on the same path. And
This is, yeah, Michael, I think this is a very interesting take that I think we are discussing on the podcast. And I love that you have mentioned, and I see what you're saying, the difference between being fulfilled and happy. And it's a very interesting learning for me as well over here, I would say. And firstly, I would say I'm thoroughly enjoying our conversation right now,
yeah,
because I am learning a lot of stuff, and a very different, not different, but I think the perspectives that I have kind of, maybe touched upon sometime in life, but it is really not kind of stayed, because a lot of things,
yeah,
that one feeds into their head. So I'm happy to kind of revisit quite a lot of them, and also learn a few of them over here right now with you. I hear what you're saying, when it's like, when you do not attach your value with the outcomes, what you're doing, but with what exactly you are, and who you are, like, and what you're performing. For example, as you mentioned, that you are an artist and you don't want to label yourself a good or bad. You just find a lot of immense joy in doing what you're doing.
yeah,
And I think once you find joy in doing something, you eventually do it better, because for the internal drive of things, that you want to get better, even if today,
yeah.
let's say, for the sake of the world, for their rules and parameters, you are not that good, but because you love doing that, you will obviously keep working on that. And if you definitely work on something for many years, you will definitely get somewhere. I think it's given. So it's very interesting to see your journey, Michael. I'm so glad that we had you on the podcast, and we've seen you grow from amazing creative child to even more creative adult that you are. Because being a creative adult, and being and understanding that who you are, being fulfilled within yourself, this is a long journey that you have taken, and which means that you have really carved yourself out in a way that best represents you. And this would be, I think, my biggest takeaway, that in your life, work on yourself, carve the version of yourself that you are proud of, or that you would really like. There are many perspectives, thoughts, things that are going around, but ultimately one can only be fulfilled, as you mentioned, I like to use that word as well, is when you know that you're doing something that you are happy with, and that really gives you joy. So thank you so much, Michael, for being on my
You're
first step
welcome.
ever.
Yeah.
And before we take your leave, I would really like you to leave our listeners with any top three learnings, the ultimate top three learnings that you think that you would love to
Yeah.
kind of share with our listeners today.
So always remind you, and whenever you feel super or bad, it doesn't really matter. All you remind yourself, how does that connect with your one of oneness? You are one of 8 billion people. You're one of people. You're not a gender. You're not a race. You're not anything. You're just one human being. Nature is all, they're animals. They're not all zebras. Zebras are the best. Everybody has to be a zebra. No, there's giraffes and elephants and dogs and cats, and everybody looks different, and everybody has their own perspective. So know that you are one of one, and should always remind yourself. And then you have a perspective which from your family. Everybody has a different perspective. Not everybody likes the same music, the same theater, the same whatever. Everybody's one. And then when you know that, you trust the fulfillment. That's the third one. So you know the one-on-one is, know that you also have one perspective. And that actually, when you know that everybody has one perspective, everybody is right. There is not, oh, you're wrong, I'm right. No, your perspective as one of one is this. And so when we talk to each other, which is so good in podcast, we are all right. We're not, oh my God, you're wrong. No, I experienced that the VW car is really good, and you experienced that VW car is really bad. Nobody is wrong. We have a different experience with the same car. I mean, you can say, I had when I saw the theater, I hated it. When I said, no, I thought it was great. It doesn't really matter. We are all right. There's nobody right or wrong. It's the moment when we generalize and make him wrong and not fulfilled and not looking at our fulfillment. That's where we get in trouble. And also, there's one thing that we have to really look at. We are a part of nature, right? We are part of nature. We are not in charge of nature. We are not a thing. We are a part of nature. And there is the system relevance, which means all the whatever, the bank, the city, the thing. And then there's the digital world. And it's very important to see the perspective of digital world, system relevance, what's going on in, city law, school, and then human-centric, which is everybody's one-on-one. In systems, they want to classify you. You get a gender, you get a race, you get a sexuality. And then in the digital, you can just make up your gender. You just say, I'm a furry, I'm a this, I'm that, and you can just make it up. And then also in the education, it's its own metaverse. And then politics and news are its own metaverse. They're codependent. So you gotta know in what play your game. I'm playing chess, or I'm playing Monopoly, or I'm playing this. I'm playing hoops. But you have to know what you're playing, because there's always different rules in different things. And the digital world, in your age, you grew up not even thinking about nature. You grew up system relevant and digital world. And now you think that system relevant is really the right thing. It's not. The true thing is the natural, human-centric. We are all one-on-ones, and that's the most important. And I think that's the best advice I can give you.
I'm so glad that we are ending on a note where we have the very, very clear understanding of what human-centric approach is what we're really talking about, because
Yeah.
that's very important. It's very, very important, you know, uh, thing that you've highlighted over here is a lot of us are growing up in the digital world, and we are not very close to the nature, or we do not understand
Yeah.
that that's where we come from. And yes, I mean, even if you take like a 5 or 10 minutes walk in the nature, you are so relieved, because
Yeah.
that's where I think we all stem from. So I love this conversation, Michael. Thank you so much for being on my first step ever.
Anytime you want me, I come back. And I sent you a link for all your listeners about the human centricity and that, so they can actually read it, and it makes it more clear, because it's totally transferring you. It's transcending you when you get that, when you really understand it.
I love that. And yes, everything, as I always mention to our listeners, that if you have been glued to us so far, you've been listening to us, I know that you have loved what Michael has been talking about, and you would love to know more about him. So I will need all the links in the show notes below, as we always do. So do check that out. And I have been very, very, I think I've got a lot of interest in different aspects of the things that you have mentioned. And we would definitely love to have you on board in future as well, and maybe discuss something very human-centric approaches even more in detail for our listeners. So, but for now, I like to request you to leave our listeners with a quote or a saying that you really resonate with.
Know who you are and know that it is enough. It is enough that you know who you are. That is enough because you're
It's
one of one.
amazing.
That's because you're one of one.
I love that. Know who you are and know that you are enough. Love
Because
it.
you know who you are, because you're one on one. You cannot not. You have to prove to me how you can never be enough when you are one on one of 8 million. You cannot not be enough. You have to be enough because nature doesn't make mistakes.
Love that. On that amazing note, very, very deep but very true note, I like to wrap this episode up and want to really thank Michael for being on this podcast and giving his time and let us see the world through his lens, which is actually very, very, very true. And I think it's very important that we understand that it's one on one, as he mentioned. So thank you, Michael, for being on my first step ever. And as I always say to my listeners, that start believing in yourself and keep believing in yourself. And we'll see you next time.